Good afternoon, good people. How you doing? Welcome to Deconstructing Christianity. I am your host, Coach Renz, and today we're going to go through this topic again because I didn't get a good argument from anybody. They were too afraid. So hopefully we can get some good arguments today or good conversation today. Uh, Today we are going to talk about the Old Testament. And as I've said on many occasions, without the Old Testament, you can't have the New Testament. Without the Old Testament, there's no Jesus. Jesus cannot exist without the Old Testament. So Christianity, therefore, cannot actually be a true story unless the Old Testament is correct. As many like to say, if the foundation is weak, then the house will crumble. Even the Jesus characters, what did he say? That if your house is built on sand, that it'll fall, but it has to be built on stone. And today we're going to examine whether or not the Christian faith, the Abrahamic faith, period, are built on stone or are they built on sand. And I'm going to tell you right off the bat that the Old Testament faith, the Abrahamic faiths, are built on sand. I mean, just starting with Genesis. Genesis tells us two different creation stories. Two separate creation stories are talked about in the Genesis story. When you read the Genesis story, so first, let me explain that chapters is not something that the ancient Israelites would have had. The chapters are something that was created by later writers. When they start to canonize these books, they begin to put them in chapters and verses. So there were no chapters and verses on the scrolls themselves. The parchments that we have found, there are no chapters and verses. These are later creations. So there is no Genesis chapter 1, Genesis chapter 2. But what we can tell with linguistic archaeology is that Genesis chapter 1 should fully extend until the first line of Genesis chapter 2, verse 4. Then Genesis verse 4, in the middle of verse 4, starts an entirely different creation story. And in those two conflicting stories, what we see is that the animals and the plants in Genesis in chapter 1 were created first. But in chapter 2, the animals and plants are created after man, after Adam. And some even go as far as to say that the Adam creation was a special creation of man, that this is the special creation of the Israelites, right? And so it sets up where Cain can have a wife from these other people, right? So it creates that excuse. Later books talks about how, Cain and Abel had twin sisters that were born at the same time, and that he married his twin sister. But those books have been seen to be forgeries or written so late that it doesn't even matter. So Genesis chapter, just as soon as we start the book off, Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2, we got conflicting stories. We got contradictions throughout the entire thing. And if the creation account is false, is built on sand, as I like to say, as the Bible like to say, Christians like to say, then the whole thing is false. The whole story falls apart. Jesus can't be Jesus if the line of David is not special, right? To which the line of David ain't special. It's not a special line anyway. David is a change up. Is a change up, and then a history was created for David. Saul didn't work out, so then David had to become the new line of the tribe of Judah, so that the whole story can fit. So, baptized after Easter. I didn't mean. I'm a new Christian baptized after Easter. Okay. Why did you become a new Christian when your whole foundation is built on contradictions and made up mythologies? If the line of Jesus came from the fake prostitution of Tamar and Perez, Tamar through the son Perez, through the illegal acts of Leviticus, because Leviticus says that a father should not have sex with his daughter-in-law, but yet that's what happened in the story with Judah and Tamar, and then you get Jesus through that line. They even consider it a blessing to be blessed that's the same as the house of Perez. Sounds like political spinning, if anything. So there are so many problems with this Old Testament. Fact that there is absolutely no proof of a flood. There's no proof of a Tower of Babel in the way that the Bible describes it. There's no proof of Moses and the Exodus, Joshua's conquest. We have none of those things. Not one of them. So how can these stories, you base your Jesus on these mythological stories that have no evidence of proof, and there's actually more evidence to go against them, and yet you still choose Jesus? That makes no sense to me. That's not critically thinking through the process. And let me put the link for YouTube and Facebook up. If you are on TikTok, I am. Oh, when was that supposed to be? Ugh. I do have a tech session coming up so that I can have everybody on the same damn thing and not have to use my phone and my laptop. Your opinion does not make reality. What I'm stating is not my opinion. What I'm stating is what the Bible says and what science has and archaeology has demonstrated. So it's not my opinion. That's the problem with many people who believe in these religions. They think that when you're stating scientific fact, when you're stating historical facts, that it is your opinion that you're stating, that you're not stating anything factual, when in all truth, your belief in a book of mythologies are an opinion. Because you're restating the opinion of those who had no scientific data to back up their statements. Let's just say, for shits and giggles, Moses wrote Genesis. Just for shits and giggles. Moses is stating an opinion. Moses is not backing up any of the statements of Genesis by any facts whatsoever. Oh, God gave him the revelation. An opinion that cannot be supported by any facts whatsoever. So who then, therefore, is making their life decisions based on an opinion? Sounds like the Bible believer is the one that's stating their facts on opinion, stating their life, their belief on somebody's opinion. But people have been so indoctrinated, whether directly or indirectly, into these religions, they can't see the illogic of their religion. What facts support Moses actually ever existed? We can see plenty of facts that he didn't exist. We do not see the downfall of Egypt in the sense that Moses proclaimed it with his 10 plagues. That would have created a catastrophic event throughout the Mediterranean. Never happened. We don't even see a catastrophic event of the Mediterranean until we see the end of the Bronze Age collapse, which is long after the supposedly time frame of Moses. Now, Orange makes a statement on YouTube. Me personally would be the personal testimony and life experience saved me from drugs and depression and anxiety. I did my research and watched a lot of God Logic. So Orange Pork Chop, I like that name, by the way. If you were born and raised in India, do you not think that you could have this exact same experience, the exact same personal testimony, if you followed the Hindu gods, if you followed the Muslim gods, if you followed the Buddhist traditions? Because if you were born and raised in India, you would have been more led to follow those traditions? Now, his answer, he responded pretty quickly, is no. Well, if your answer is no, then you're invalidating every Hindu who claims that they went through the same problem, same issue, and found Brahma. Every Buddhist who went through the same thing, through the same experience, and they found the Eightfold Path. Every Muslim in India who went through the same thing and found deliverance through following Allah. You are disrespecting their tradition and their experience, what they went through. Are we so blinded by nationalities, so blinded by our own selfishness, that we cannot see that the same thing that every other, my experience, my testimony, is the exact same testimony you can find in every other religion and non-religion? Thank you for joining the fan club. Appreciate it. Oh, and before I get started, thank you everybody who supports the channel. Look, be honest, I wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for the support of people. So thank you for all your supports on gifts and super chats and all those sorts of things. Stars, thank you guys. I appreciate it very much. But that is the part that people who believe in any religion struggle, because they can't see that and if their whole basis is testimony, experience, their view is so narrow that you can't see that those same testimonies, experiences happen everywhere with every religion and non-religion. And they always think that theirs is the only way, the right way. Oh, we already got somebody over here on TikTok. Oh, nope. I guess that was a accident by Justin. So they always claim that their experience, your experience actually means absolutely nothing to the grand scheme of whether or not something is true or not true. It doesn't. When it comes to these types of things, your experience is meaningless. You're just justifying. Oh, somebody just put it up here. You're just veritas. You're just, he says that, and your opinion is not justified. You're just justifying your experience based on your beliefs, based on your culture, that in the country that you grew up and you was raised around. You're justifying it based on that. It's not a justification based on actual facts. So it's a bunch of bullshit. Oh, this is Black people have the mark of Cain. Ooh. Are you Mormon? Toaster Poodle, are you a Mormon? Because that would seem to follow. Now, it's not only Mormons, there are other groups as well who, in the medieval times, they thought that the mark of Cain was the fact that your skin was turned dark. There's actually nothing that demonstrates what the mark of Cain was. I'm more apt to believe that if Cain did exist, then the mark of Cain would have been immortality. But then other books say Cain died, and it's suggested in the Bible that Cain died. So, but we know that we have no idea when and how and if Cain died. And you have no idea what the we have no idea what this mark was. So you can state that, but it means nothing. Interesting concept. Good old Rupert. The earth was made. There was a first man and woman. These are facts. Perspectively, you are correct. There was the first time that later generations would identify the Homo sapien, the hominid, as now this is man, now this is woman. This is a lack of understanding of how evolution works for most religious people, because they don't understand that there's no, oh, this is a type of being, and we're going to call this one, I don't know, Homo erectus. and then this man and woman had a baby and it came out as a Homo sapien. It doesn't work that way. This is a long step by step process until you get so far away from one variation that now you give it a name. You now have determined this is man. So it doesn't work in the way that you think it works, that all of a sudden, like, bam, this non-chicken birthed out a chicken. Is millions of adaptations that happen and occur over tens of thousands of years. So thank you for showing us that you don't know how that actually works. So when it was the first man, when it was the first woman, is based on the thought process of later generations. I don't know. People keep clicking that they want to come up here on TikTok, but then they fail to show up. They fail to show up. So I'll try to keep up with the questions and statements that people are making. Orange hasn't made a case to validate his Bible. Patel never makes a case to validate their Bible. So we know Patel is not even worth reading their comments. Not like the Bible. And like I said, the nail in the coffin for me was a spiritual encounter and the 180 my life took after accepting God. My life took 180 when I joined the Marine Corps. It took 180, join the Marine Corps. My life took 180 when I got divorced. My life took 180 when I got remarried. My life took a hell of a 180 when my first child was born. Having an experience that takes you a whole 180 in your life doesn't mean anything. I've served many clients that one experience gave them 180 in their lives. Some involving spirituality, most not. But like I said earlier, you're 180 because you lived in a country that is mostly Christian, more than likely. I don't know exactly where you're from. It happens because you're either socially indoctrinated into a religion or you are directly indoctrinated into a religion. You finally give into that religion when you hit a low point. You see, most people make these massive changes in their lives when they feel enough pain. Everybody has a different level. So if you were out there just living, as they say, living in the world, doing your worldly things and all this sort of stuff, and then your life falls apart, you get addicted to drugs, you're losing your jobs, your family don't, kicks you to the curb, you can't get a woman or a man, and your life is just in the dumps. You don't make that change until you feel enough pain. So Orange Porkchop felt enough pain in his life that then he looked for something to change his life. And relative to the country you're living in, the culture you're around, that's going to be your change, especially when people reach for some type of spirituality. The change is Brahma. The change is Allah. The change is something. That's the change. That's the big change. So that's the whole, that experience don't mean nothing. Experience means absolutely nothing. I can understand your opinion, but what about the people who hit the tops and will have that Jesus hole in their heart? That what I believe we have a hole in it. Okay. Again, pain. I get all the money. I got all the fame. I got the wife. I got the kids. But that person is still depressed. That person still has an issue with life. None of those things help them, fulfill them because of their perspective of those things. The American dream, get the house, the white picket fence, the spouse, the 2.5 kids, got the good job. I have everything the American dream said should make me happy in life. I got it, but yet I'm still not happy. Pain. And so that person reaches out for something. I got a friend of mine right now, and you guys know I have very few friends, but I have a friend of mine right now for the last 10, 15 years. there's an emptiness in his life. That emptiness is because he has been working for the last 20 years in a field that he cannot stand. Can't stand it at all. Hates the job. I got out of it. I stopped being an IT guy. But he was so attached to the, his lifestyle was so attached to that job. He can't leave it. But when I helped him start a business dealing with cars, high-end cars, it was fulfilled. His happiness then came. Right? Now he's happy because he's dealing in a business that deals with something that he loves. See, his pain point was his industry. A lot of people who are at the top, as we would claim them, their pain point might be something different, but then they find a coping mechanism in religion. So no. All right, we got some more people, I think. Maybe nope, not that one. Not that one. Let's see. I'm gonna have to ask this person something. The mentor. Nope. These TikTokers are clicking that button by accident. So anyway, people don't, most of the time, if a person really, really, really was honest with themselves to find out what's missing in their lives, it's generally not a religion that fixes it. It's all the other stuff. And I'm glad. Here's the thing. Orange pork chop. If your life was in the shitter, you are addicted to drugs, and you feel like Jesus 180'd your life so that you're not on drugs anymore, so that you're not a menace to society or whatever it is, hey man, stick with Jesus. I do not want you to change. Stick with Jesus. I'm not asking you to change. Everything I do here is not for people to change, to walk away from their religion. Where does the pain? Sorry, there's a motorcycle right outside. And this is a very valid question. See, every time I want to talk about this subject matter, and we can never talk about this subject matter. We can never talk about this subject matter. So where does the pain come from? Life. Pain comes from life. It comes from civilization, from society. It comes from the fact that when you were born into a world that says that this is what success and happiness looks like. And it's generalized for everyone. But that's not what success and happiness look like. Success and happiness look like whatever it is for you. And when you're not pursuing that, when you're not involved in that, then pain comes. When life says that, perfect. One of my former clients, she grew up in Eastman, Georgia, little country town. In her little country town, if you are a woman and you were over the age of 25 and you weren't married and had a baby, then you were a failure. Now, it didn't matter that this young lady had grown up, went to college, didn't have a baby without a husband, became a pharmacist, was a pharmaceutical manager, making great money. None of those things matter. The only thing that she had this pain, and the pain that she had, that she complained about for 5 years that I trained her, is the fact that she was considered an old maid. It had been drilled in her head that she was an old maid, that she was unsuccessful. She did not have a husband. She did not have a child. And so she felt pain for that for the 5 years that I trained her. And about 7 years after I met her, her on and off boyfriend, they finally got married. And then they had a child. Now she feels whole. So where does the pain come from? The pain came from her family and her community saying that a woman must be married and have children by the time she's 25. Pain comes from society. Pain comes from you being indoctrinated into a mindset that is not your mindset. So I don't know what prompted you to get involved with drugs. I don't know what prompted you I don't know what you was going through. Can't know unless you tell me. But I sure as hell guarantee it's not a lack of God. Think about this for a second. A newborn baby does not know God, has no idea about these gods. A newborn baby is atheist as a mug. Is that newborn baby going through pain? Or is that newborn baby happy and laughing most of the time? Children running around, don't know God. You see, I just saw this, and thank you everybody who wished my wife a happy born day. Over our born day weekend travel, uh, we saw two kids never met each other, but they automatically just friended each other, was having fun, a good time. Kids don't know about race and caste economics and are focused on sex and gender and all those sorts of things. These were just two kids. They were having fun in the pool, and then they was having fun running around the whole resort. They was just having fun. They learn pain when the expectations of life starts to be put upon them of what they are supposed to believe and not believe. 20 years from now, that little boy, that little girl can hate each other because of nationalities, because of gender, because of race, because of economic caste. 20 years from now, they will have been indoctrinated into the American thought process, and they could literally hate each other. When 20 years prior, they were running around having fun. So, yeah, some kids have a rough start. Some kids have a rough life. Pain is placed in them early, but pain is placed in people through society. It is not because of God. These kids were perfectly happy without God. Babies are perfectly happy without God. As long as they're getting their food, as long as they're loving, children, babies are perfectly fine. Society creates pain, and your God doesn't relieve it. When people say that their God relieved them of their pain, gave them a 180, that's just a coping mechanism. And then they actually, but thankfully, they will use those situations to try to get their life in order to find the other happiness. Because guess what? Most of the people who are in churches, they're in pain. Most of the people who are believing in this God, they're in pain. Their life sucks. Most of them are feeling it. You go to church, and pastors know this, and they utilize this to keep you caught up, to keep you believing. I saw this little video today where this woman pastor was talking about, oh, God is about to release something, but give you the promise, but you got to be obedient. Take that first step. That first step might be evangelism, joining the evangelism team. That first step might be, what did she say next? Because I like the way she put them in order. She joined the evangelism team. That first step might be joining one of the other church ministries. That first step might be making a sacrificial donation to the building fund. I ain't heard building fund in a long ass time. To the building fund. But in order, and then she stopped right there. But in order for God to deliver to you all the blessings, you got to first make that sacrifice to God, that step to God. And she ended with that building fund because she wants that to be the last thing on their mind, right? And that's the easiest thing. The other two things require them to make time and commitments to organizations within the church. Giving some money out of your pocket is the easy thing to do. So the psychology that she was working on was the easiest path to you feeling better about yourself, which is to give money to that building fund. You see? So, but these people are in these churches and they're hurting. They're hurting in the church. You got the single women who just keep praying and praying and praying for a husband. They in there hurting. Why God ain't giving them the perfect husband yet? Why is that divorce rate just as high in the church as it is outside the church? Why is pedophilia higher in the church than it is outside the church? Right? That pain is in the church. Why financial brokenness is just as high in the church as it is outside the church? Drug addiction is going on in the church. So if God is this safe haven, this deliverance, they should not be having these issues, right? They should be filled. You got baptized. Now you got baptized right after Easter. You're gonna have a good time right now. Life is gonna be splendid. Everything is gonna be coming up rainbows, looking great in your eyes. Everything is gonna be looking progressive. Come back in about 2 years. That pain, that whatever pain that caused you to go into drugs, I guarantee you'll still have that pain. The religion, thankfully, hopefully, I ain't gonna say thankfully because we don't know yet, but hopefully that religion will be like your AA, your sponsor, your drug sponsor, and every time you have that urge, it'll hopefully keep you from doing it. I do hope that for you, right? But what I hope for you even more so, Orange, is for you to actually go into a serious discovery of why you ended up in that situation in the first place and fix that. Right? Shit. I'm having trouble. This white shirt is making it hard for me to read some of these comments. The word ain't got nothing to do with your personal problems. It's your own fault. Yeah, except for when people base their life off of this word. When you think that your way of thinking, your way of life is the way that this God wants you to be, that's when it is not only your fault, but the fault of you believing in this God. So, yeah. Oh, finally somebody. Charles.
Good morning, brother. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Charles?
Doing great. Yeah, I just saw it pop up briefly. I totally agree with where you're coming from. I'm an agnostic atheist, ex-Christian, raised in the church, dealt with the whole stuff growing up off the guild and all the craziness. And I appreciate you kind of helping to try to get people to realize that there's many other ways to live your life. You don't have to deal with some imaginary sky daddy breathing down your neck, threatening you with everything in the world to try to force you to do something. That's all I had.
Exactly. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for having me up.
My pleasure. Have a good one. I appreciate that from Charles. Yeah, we don't need it. And religion creates so much shame and guilt, right? And yeah, people like to focus, like somebody on here is talking about, oh, thou shalt not steal. People like to focus on some of the things that were part of civilization before these so-called 10 commandments were ever written. You had in the Hammurabi Code about stealing. You had in the Confessions of Ma'at. We know that the Kemetic civilization is thousands of years older than the Israelite civilization. They already had, I have not stolen, as one of the Confessions of Ma'at. The Code of Hammurabi, which is before the invention of Israelites, already had you should not steal. Civilizations already had this. The moment civilization started to sprout up, and civilization, in my definition of it, is anytime any group of people come together to live as a unit. That is civilization, regardless of their technologically advancements or not. That's civilization. Soon as they come together, laws come into place. Stealing becomes something you can't do. Right? Before, when it was just you walking around, you could pick up, you see a rock, you could pick up that rock. You can take it home. You can use it to sharpen your blade, whatever you wanted to do with it. But once you start living with other people, now you can't necessarily just take something that someone else has. It's a natural outgrowth of living with other people. So when people say, oh, the 10 Commandments, no, 10 Commandments ain't shit, because there were laws around before then. Every law in the 10 Commandments was already around. Even the laws about gods. Because those people had their gods before this Israelite God ever showed itself up. We see that at Tehran Tepe and Göbekli Tepe, that especially on the vulture pillar, that the people whoever these people were in Göbekli Tepe and Tehran Tepe, that they had a belief in deity, in some type of deity. Most of it was astrotheology. It appears that most of it is astrotheology. That's the leading thought process right now. But they had their gods. and they had their rituals and thought processes and everything dealing with their God. So believing in a God, worshiping that God, was around long beforehand. Long beforehand. Kabbalah, bro. I don't know what you mean by Kabbalah, bro. So, no, your 10 commandments don't mean much of nothing in the grand scheme of things. So, who cares? What that tree means and that hand symbol meaning around your neck. It has meanings depending upon which society you're talking about. So which society are you talking about? Now, if you're asking what does it mean to me, that's a wholly different question than what those societies meant it to be. What they mean to me is that it's a nice piece of jewelry that I happen to like when I saw it. I could care less what the, because like you talked about the tree. Are you talking about it from the Viking perspective? Because then this would be the tree of Yggdrasil. But I'm not Viking and I don't care what the Vikings thought this is. Is it the tree of life from the Kemetic, the Kabbalion? Well, the Hermetics. That's what Greeks and Egyptians thought, but I don't care what they thought. It's a nice piece of little jewelry. That's all I care about. Are you talking about this when it was the hand of Mary in medieval times when they thought it would protect them from, it will help them get pregnant and protect their children from childbirth? Or is it the hand of Hansama, which is relatively the same type of protection? Or is it from the Sumerian times when they thought it would protect their husbands, their men from walking off into the darkness and the Lelutu grabbing them? Which time frame? Which culture? Because for me, when I saw it in Daytona, I said, oh, I like that one. I think I'm gonna buy it. Because that's all it means. Symbols only have meanings that people put on it. The golden calf, it only has a meaning that people put on it. If you look at a society, perfect example. If an American goes to India, a cow walking around the street freely means absolutely nothing to that person. It's a cow. What that means is cheese on mine. That's what it means. Put some cheese on that cheeseburger. That's all that cow walking around in India means. But to the people in India, to the Hindus in India, I should say specifically, it's a sacred animal. So so when people who are in India, you know what? I got some Indian folk that I talk to. I'm gonna ask them. But the people in India who come to America, the cow is sacred to them. But in America, it's a cheeseburger. It's some steak. So these things mean nothing. I like when people always talk about, oh, you're wearing that pagan Wiccan. No, it don't mean shit to me. It's just jewelry. That's it. Just like Christians walking around with a cross. To Romans, it's a death symbol. Right? To the Romans, it's a symbol of death and torture and their superiority. Fuck around and find out is what the cross means to Romans. Fuck around and find out. That's what it means. But to Christians, they adopted it as a symbol of their God dying on the cross to forgive them, to be able to forgive them for the sins that he originally created. See, it don't mean nothing. It means absolutely nothing. Symbols only have meaning what you put on it. The KKK looking hood in America is racism. In Spain is reverence to God. You see what I'm saying? Symbols only have meaning that means something to those people. So do the symbols really have power? You know what? That's a whole good video by itself. I gotta remind myself. Where's my pen? Yeah, that's a good video. Appreciate it, bro. That's a good video. So these symbols don't mean shit. They mean absolutely nothing. I could wear a swastika. But what does the swastika mean? If I was culturally German in the the 1940s German, it has one meaning. But if I'm Buddhist, it means something totally different, right? Because the swastika in Buddhism is a symbol of unity and peace and love. You see what I'm saying? You see, your symbols don't mean shit. Why can we never have a conversation about the damn topic? Dark Knight.
What up, bro?
How you doing?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Pretty good, pretty good. So what do you think about the subject matter?
Did the Torah actually happen? Nah. It's mythological. John Henry Clark, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, male chauvinist murder cults.
I would agree. Male chauvinist murder cults. That's a good way to state these cults. Because that's all it really is. Throw a little blood cult. I throw a little blood in there too.
Yeah, all three of these faiths turned on black people and enslaved them. Like Islam did, Christianity did, and the Torah, they gave birth to this crazy concept of a chosen people. So
yeah, but I would actually say every religion does that though. If you look at Shinto and all these other religions, their people, the people who develop those religions, all think that they are special. So really,
they all have a hierarchy. They're all anti-women. Man is the Don Mega, and the woman got to stay in a place, and all this old foolishness, man.
No, I agree 100%, and I agree with that with all the damn religions. Even I know a lot of black people like to go from Christianity to like African ancestry, but if you really take a deep dive into African ancestry, it's the same shit. Their people are special, whichever tribe it is, or nation, or empire, they're special. That's why they can enslave other people or mistreat other people. And they're all still male dominant. Even the ones that got a female deity that is part of creation or is creation, they still are male dominated society that treat women like shit.
I don't think that's the character of black people though. I think that in our culture, historically, it was different. Because to my understanding, the first person to find God in our culture was the woman, was the black woman.
Where'd you get that from?
You see, where did I read that at? Oh man, now you put me on the spot.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna put you on the spot.
I read so much stuff, man. I would say by Sheikh Anta Diop, The African Origins of Civilization.
Mm-hmm. To my memory,
and just studying, because, like for instance, right. So when you look at the pharaonic dynasties, right,
mm-hmm.
it wasn't patriarchal. It was more matriarchal, where the line of succession, like when you had a pharaoh on the stand on the throne, right?
Mm-hmm.
The next to be pharaoh was not his son; it was his sister's son. Yo, bro, I'm sorry, I gotta go. I'm at work, bro.
Okay. But that was I appreciate you, Dark Knight, but that was wholly incorrect. The lineage in the pharaonic dynasties passed down from father to son. Now, simply because they married their sister was usually their first wife, and when she would then be the dominant wife within their polygamous relationships. And so, because she would be the queen mother, but the son of the queen mother would become the next pharaoh. The only time that a woman became a pharaoh is if they had no sons, or if the son was too young and the woman had to take over until that son came of age, and that's what we see with Tutankhamun. Tutankhamun was too young to become pharaoh, so his mother, she was pharaoh until he came of age. So we don't know. The pharaonic dynasties were male centric as well. Wait a minute, did he come back up? Are you back up, Dark Knight?
They wanted to ask me a question.
Yeah, but I don't know if you heard what I just said, but that's not how pharaonic dynasties actually work. The pharaonic dynasties work in the shortest version I can put it is that the pharaoh would generally marry his sister. That would be the queen mother. Then he would also have many other wives as well. If the queen mother gives him a son, then that son becomes pharaoh. If she doesn't, then the next prominent wife son becomes pharaoh. We see that with Akhenaten. But the only time a woman became pharaoh is when the son was too young or there were just no sons. But it was still male centric in the pharaonic dynasties. That's why damn near every pharaoh is a dude.
Yeah. What you had Queen Candace. You had
She's not part of the pharaonic dynasty.
Yeah, she was. Like when the Heat Coast invaded them, she was sitting on the throne there, and I think it was Candace or I don't want, and not Nefertiti, but they had, to my understanding, it was at least maybe 3 or 4 female pharaohs.
Oh, I don't disagree that there were female pharaohs, but the norm in the pharaonic dynasties and kings before pharaohs was male ascensions. It was not female oriented. There was special situations when anytime a woman became the pharaoh.
I disagree with you, bro, because in order for you to even be a pharaoh or a god, you had to have a goddess. Like you couldn't be that. You had to have a goddess attached to you. And also, when you look at the
wait. What did you just say? Say that again. When you have a you couldn't have a female. Well, first let's tackle the first thing that you said. All right, so I just brought up a list of all of pharaohs, right? So you got, now first they were kings in the old kingdom. You got Namir, dude, Droger, dude, Senefu, a dude, Khufu, a dude, Menenhotep the second, Senusret the third, dude. These are all dudes. Amos the first, Hatshepsut, one of the few female pharaohs. Thutmose the third, Amenhotep the third, Akhenaten, Tutankhamun, Ramses the second. Then you get into the Ptolemy dynasties, and other than Cleopatra, they was all dudes. So the line in Egypt ran through dudes. There were only a few women who were pharaohs. And then you were saying, what were you saying about the gods? You couldn't have a male god attached to you?
I said you couldn't be a god unless you had a goddess.
It depends on which story are you talking about, and that's not actually true because Ra didn't have a goddess.
Well, even when you look at the original Trinity story with Isis, Osiris, and Horus.
Yeah. And who was their daddy? Who was Isis and Osiris' daddy?
Let me see. Isis, Osiris, Horus. It was Ra.
Right.
Like, it was Ra.
Exactly.
If I'm saying it correctly, but the thing is that
hold on.
Okay.
And Ra did not have a wife. And Ra was the supreme creator deity.
Yeah, he was.
No wife.
But the thing about it though, when you look at I was on ChatGPT one time, and I said I want you to do a comparison between the women in Rome and the women in Egypt. Right? There was no comparison. Like in African culture, I didn't see the oppression of women. Like just when I didn't see it. I haven't seen it. Like when it did the comparison, like, women, like, even damn, what was the name of the deity who was responsible for putting the sun up in the sky and then taking it down? That was a female deity. The first deity
in what
was
religion?
actually a female deity.
What religion?
Well, it was a religion of, I wouldn't say it was a religion. It was the worldview of Egypt and Kemet.
Of a female putting the sun up and down?
Yeah, it's part of the culture. I forget her name, but her responsibility was to. Now, this is mythology. We're not talking literal. You know what I'm saying? But mythology, it was her job to put the sun in the sky, and then when it's time, when the sun go down, it was time for she brought it back down. I just can't think of her name. You know what I'm saying? But
I've never heard of that one.
In African culture, it seems to me that it was more based on complementary pairs, as opposed to a hierarchy in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, where the man is the head, where you have God, then the man, then the woman, and the children. In more ancient African culture, it seemed they seemed to have more balance, like they call it Mayat, right? Truth, justice, reciprocity, different things like that. But it seemed to be more balanced, and it seemed to be based off of complementary pairs. Okay. And that's just in my opinion.
Okay, so here's the thing about that. Now, I did find what you was talking about. So there are some Egyptian stories that talk about how the goddess Nut swallows the sun every evening and carries her through her body, and then she rebirths the sun every morning. But understand that Nut is the daughter of Ra. So Nut is a creation of Ra. So because Ra created Jeb and Nut was in such an embrace that no land could be created. So then he created another daughter named Shu. That was the wind, and she separated Jeb and Nut. Nut then is supposedly doing the thing that you were saying, but that doesn't give her parity with the sun or anything of that nature, because Ra is still the supreme deity. As far as companions, most cultures back in the day had companion gods. So you have Zeus and Hera, right?
You talking about Greek mythology?
In Greek mythology, you have Zeus and Hera, right? You have the god king and the god queen.
Right.
You got Aphrodite, you got Apollo, you got Mars, and and Venus. So you got you got parity, male and female deities, but you got that in every religion. So that doesn't make the African religions any more special because they have the same type of parity. Now, the origin of the and real quick, I only bring up one person at a time, but in early early Israelite religion, they had the same parity. It was El and Asherah, but it's not until the Babylonian captivity that they get rid of Asherah and now say that their God is supreme, because and it's after the end of the Babylonian captivity when they learn from the Zoroastrians about, no, there's just one supreme deity of the ether, and then there's an evil god, which is the devil. And they learned that from the Persians. So up until around 534, the late 500s BCE, the Israelites had the same kind of parity. So, and that was normal all around the world. You look at almost every culture anciently around the world, they had the daddy and the mama and the child.
But the thing is, though, that at that time in human history, Africa, so to speak, was the center, I would say. Everybody came to Africa to learn. The technology was there. The education was there. The learning was there.
So you're talking about Egypt.
Everything. Yeah, Kemet and Ethiopia and Cushites and Nubia. Yeah, Africa at that time was the center of the world. Everybody went to Africa to learn and study.
Everybody in the Mediterranean. Everybody in the Mediterranean. We're overstating the importance of this region.
The Greeks.
Okay, you're missing what I'm saying. You're overstating the importance of an area. Most of our history that we know about is Western history, which, or I like to say Mediterranean history. Egypt sits on the Mediterranean. Yes, it was a major trading hub. It was a major center for learning. It has its props. But the whole world didn't come to Egypt. The people in West Africa, Southern Africa didn't go to Egypt. The people in Australia and Asia didn't go to Egypt. The people in the Americas didn't go to Egypt. So we have to be able to separate what was going on in the Mediterranean and what was going on in the rest of the world. Because you still had learning centers in other places of the world that didn't have nothing to do with Egypt.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think women played a significant political role in the world?
Of course it does. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's not the whole world. See, Western culture ends up dominating the world. So we learn, so most of our history is attached to Western culture.
I don't understand what you mean when you say that. What do you mean by that?
So because the Mediterranean world became advanced faster than most other places in the world, out of necessity and through exploration, most of the knowledge that we have of history today comes from that Western understanding. So we ignore all the advancements that the Chinese made, that the West Africans made, that the people in India were making, the Aztecs and Mayans, what they were making. We kind of ignore those because they didn't have the same type of advancement that the Mediterranean cultures had. And so we give.
You mean as far as building pyramids and shaping it in the form of the stars? You're talking about that, right?
I'm talking about a bunch of stuff, really. But because if we look at just building construction, then you have to look at the building construction that was going on in India, and their construction was just as amazing and influential. The constructions that was going on in China, the Aztecs construction, like for the Peruvians to have built Machu Picchu is an amazing feat of ingenuity, but it doesn't get the props that Western culture gets because Western culture came in, they destroyed a bunch of shit, killed a bunch of people, because they were more inventive in warfare.
Well, no. When you say Western culture, and then you're saying African culture was Western culture?
No, Western culture is the Mediterranean culture. North Africa, Middle East, Turkey, Europe. That's Western culture.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Is it fair to say that Chancellor Williams wrote a book called Destruction of Black Civilization, Great Issues of a Race from 4500 BC to 3000 AD, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is it fair to say that Black people's history goes pretty far back?
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that Black people had the world's first organized society? Is that fair?
I would say that.
Okay. So I'm just trying to develop a framework. You know what I'm saying? Because is it fair to say that when we talk about paper, that paper was invented in Egypt or Kemet?
Yeah.
Okay. And let's just say when the dead died, embalming people, that was created in Egypt too?
Sure. As far as we know.
Okay.
But what's the point?
Well, the point is, like in math, you have 1, then 2. So if Black people had the world's first organized societies, then our place in history and who we are is just very significant, at least in my opinion.
No, it is. It is significant. It's like I was saying, it's significant. It's just that since Western cultures took over, the Mediterranean cultures, the European cultures, North African cultures took over, then much of that history is lost. So like we don't know what was going on. And you know what Adam's calendar is?
No, I've never heard of that.
All right. So and I'm not being funny, but this is what I'm gonna ask you to do. Study Africa beyond Egypt. Egypt is not the whole of Africa. Egypt is a tiny little speck of Africa. So down near in like modern day South Africa, you have Adam's calendar. Adam's calendar shows that it was a crawl civilization, that they had cattle, that there was some type of mining going on, that it was a civilization. We don't know much about it because almost everything was destroyed except for the dwelling. And so what archaeologists can put together is very limited. But it was a civilization that they estimate at minimum 70,000 years ago, but up to about 200,000 years ago. But we don't know much about that. We don't know much about how they were living, right? So
well, we can look at the Dogon tribe. Like the Dogon tribe and they didn't use any computers or anything like that, but they done mapped out the stars too, and people are wondering how they did it. So
what I'm saying is that everybody has something that they did that was amazing that other cultures hadn't came up with yet. You know, yeah. the Chinese came up with gunpowder. You know, yes, ain't nobody heard of that.
They didn't use it for warfare though.
That's not true.
That's not true.
No, they did use it for warfare. They just didn't make guns in the way that Europeans made guns, but it was used for warfare. More akin to grenades than anything else. But they developed.
Yo, bro, you well, I don't want to change the subject, but I want to ask you about this. Any thoughts on the Punic Wars between Rome and Carthage?
Thoughts like what? I mean, it was wars that was fought.
Why?
And the Punics lost.
Had Rome on its knees. Why wouldn't the Africans just send reinforcements? Why would they not do that?
What Africans?
Or the Carthaginians. Because Hannibal, when he crossed them Alps with them elephants and knocked on Rome's front door and said, "Step outside," they were shook.
Mm-hmm.
They were shook. They were scared to death.
Yeah.
After the battle of when was the last one when he like killed like 70,000 troops in like an hour? Like he had Rome on his knees. Like I don't even think we would be going through some of the stuff we're going through now if they just would have just sit the reinforcements in and let them finish.
I mean, I would have to do a deeper dive into it, but it could have been anything from supply chain, communication. I heard stories that Hannibal pulled back because his mother was sick and he went back to his mother, to other Roman generals taking advantage of other opportunities. So warfare is it's hard to look at warfare as a one simple thing because there's usually a cumulative effect that creates the outcome in warfare, not a one thing. And if Hannibal would have defeated the Romans at that time frame, then that doesn't guarantee that the transatlantic slave trade would have never happened, or the colonization of Africa would have never happened, or the colonization of the Americas would have never happened. Those things were going to happen no matter what. There was nothing that would have stopped the colonization of the Americas or the colonization of Africa. It was going to be done by somebody.
Why would you say that?
Because it's pretty much a fact of history. When you look at the Mediterranean empires, and no matter who would have won, because there were agrarian countries, empire building was very important because you need slaves in order to survive in an agrarian empire. Without slaves, an agrarian empire doesn't work, which is why slavery didn't end until the Industrial Revolution came. And then as population growth continued to grow, even though there were plagues here and there, in order to feed those lands don't provide enough to feed those people. as their population grows. So they would have to go out and find other resources. People in Africa, people in the Americas, they were lacking certain things that would have helped them to repel colonization. For instance, a horse. This is how important a horse is. Without the horse, even though it originated in the Americas, it did not allow for communication and for speed of movement of military forces, as well as those people who had horses, which is why the Mongols were able to do as much as they did to the Middle East, what we call the Middle East, and threaten Rome, because they had horses. Africans didn't have horses. The southern South Saharan Africans, they didn't have horses. So that communication between empires, that communication within an empire, the ability to move their troops, that just wasn't there. And then when you take it, then you got to look at terrain. Terrain also makes a difference as to how well people are able to transverse an area, move supplies, move military. Those things make a huge difference. So it's simple things like that. It's things like that that seem simple that the people in the Americas, the people in Africa didn't have, which put them at a disadvantage with people who had those things. And that's just a couple of things. Not even to mention guns and, gunpowder.
If you're going to get into that period, I think it was. See, like John Henry Clark once said, more than half of human history was already over before melanated people knew that a European was in the world. Right?
Okay.
So I'm looking at melanated people historically as being a very key player in the ancient world, so to speak. Very, like, a lot of, like,
most of the people in the ancient world were melanated, though. Most of the people in the ancient world contain melanin. Ancient, the Asians, even the Europeans were melanated, just at a low level, and the type of melanation that they have now is only about somewhere between 5,000 to 8,000 years old. So here's the thing. We black people today get caught up in melanin too damn much, as if it has this overarching meaning of spirituality and camaraderie. It don't. It just does not. I love being a black man. Don't get me wrong. I understand the struggle of black people. Don't get me wrong. I understand the history. But if the people in the Americas had horses and they did not have, and let's say they didn't have grains that grow plentiful in America, them motherfuckers would have went out to conquer other people. Their goals would have been to go out, explore, find these resources, and take the shit, just like the Europeans. So
I disagree with you on that one, bro.
Why? What would make them different? The reason why the Chinese did it is because they lack resources to take care of their population. So they had to go and get it.
It's evident, like, I don't subscribe to any way of looking at the world that says man is incapable of living on Earth in cooperative sharing and communication with other men on planet Earth. I just don't subscribe to that. It just doesn't sit well for me to say that it's impossible for men to be on planet Earth and not have a cooperating thing going on.
Well, we can have that, but it's not based on melanin, is my point.
No, of course not. Melanin has nothing to do with it.
But that's your argument. Your argument is that these black African people was doing this kumbaya bullshit, and they weren't. They were fighting wars against each other.
No, I don't know. If I came across like that, no, that's not my argument at all. Not at all. My argument is more that our history, like you said, has been lost. So, I'm just curious as to what made our people historically great. I would say that.
I mean, you have to go and research the advancements that people made in their societies, like the Benin Wall, for instance. The Benin Wall was a great accomplishment by the Dahomey people, or the people of Benin, that area. I don't know if it was the Dahomey or the people before them, but it's the same general area. It was a great achievement. Of course, they got their ass whooped by the Portuguese and the Dutch eventually, so they had to succumb to their rule. But they did great things. There are many buildings that are built out of stone and mud bricks, castles, things of that nature, that societies all over the world built. We just don't know about it. To go back to what then this is why I was saying it. We just don't know as much about it because most of our world history, especially for those of us in the Americas, have been dominated by Western culture, by Western history. And
let me ask you this: would you say that black people historically, when we're talking about then, had knowledge of state craftsmanship to run a state? To my understanding, they didn't even have nation states; they had territorial states. But would you say that they had the knowledge to build a state, run a state, maintain a state? Would you say that historically black people were nation builders?
I would say historically everybody was nation builders.
Okay, so today we are not.
Why would you say that?
Well, if you talk about the transatlantic slave trade, we lost a lot of things. And I think one of the things.
Now you said today.
Yeah.
You said today we are. Right. I'm talking about today.
Today
you don't see how Torre is building his nation. I literally watched and was in the beginning part of Kagame building his nation of Rwanda.
Okay.
So
I mean it in the sense of well, just going back to one of my sources, I'm thinking about Jackson Williams. He talked about that in ancient Africa, they had a democracy, and it wasn't a play democracy; it was actual real democracy.
Where?
The leaders had to do the will of the people, and if they didn't do it, they couldn't be what they were.
Where?
Specifically?
Yeah.
He talked about the Mosai states, and he talked about there was a continental-wide governing system that made
he was reaching
who they were.
He was reaching. There was no continental wide. There has never been a unified Africa, man. Never. There's never been a unified Africa. Hell, half the people in Africa didn't even know the other half of people in Africa existed. What
would you call the unification between Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt?
Okay, that's a small spit of Africa, man. That's just along the Nile River. That doesn't even go into the Aksum Empire.
Wait, say that again out of here.
So that doesn't even go. That's just along the Nile River. That has nothing to do with the people in South Africa, the people in West Africa. That's just along the Nile River. That's just the Kushite.
Yeah, every great civilization has a great river next to
it. Because people need water to live by. But what does that have to do with the rivers that flow through the Senegal or through the Gambia? With Senegal and the Gambia. That has nothing to do with those rivers.
Okay.
So those people in Upper and Lower Egypt, which is only in Egypt, has nothing to do with the people in the Gambia. And most likely at that time frame didn't even know each other existed. Egypt is not the whole of Africa.
No, it's not. There's a chapter called Egypt, Ethiopia's oldest daughter. So, yeah, definitely. But I'm thinking about Sheikh Anta Diop. He said that in order for us to be, as black people, to be reborn, we're going to have to put Egypt in its proper place because it's been eliminated from history for a reason.
When has Egypt been eliminated from history?
Well, I would say black people, I mean, us as a people as a whole, have been eliminated from history, and that this is one of the tools that the enemy has over us. That our place in human history has been supplanted.
I will.
They don't say the beginning of history is in Africa. They say the beginning of history is with the Greeks. And history started with even though that faith was kind of being challenged now, but for the most part in the world, that's what they say.
No, not in most parts of the world, because if you are Mediterranean, if you are European, if you are in the Americas, you're going to get a lot of that. But and then even if you're in the colonized parts of Africa, you're going to get a lot of that. But if you go to India, you go to China, you go to Australia, you go to the South Pacific Islands, you don't get that. Their history begins with their ancient people. You go to Peru, their ancient history begins with their ancient people. This is just, what you're talking about is Western colonization of the mind. And that is a true thing. But most of us, thankfully, since the internet has come out, a lot of information of true history has been spilling over year after year after year. So you're not, and then you have to look at different nations are only going to teach their history. You're not going to go to China and they teach an American history. They're teaching Chinese history. They're teaching about the Chinese dynasties, the War of the Six States. They're talking about the Mongol Empire. They're not talking about Europe. They're not talking about America either, nor are they talking about Africa. But as African countries become free from colonizations, they are teaching their own ancient history.
That is one of the things that colonialism did to us. Like a lot of us have this Eurocentric worldview. You know what I'm saying? We speak English as a language. We worship Christianity and capitalism, and none of these things are really indigenous culture. So that's what colonialism has done to us, and with the fact that, our manhood and womanhood was so violently taken from us, you know what I'm saying, that we're trying to get back to it. Yeah. And I think that all these things, like what we're talking about, is a part of it. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, it's a part of it. Understanding our ancient history and our place, and I think all of this is a part of it.
Well, that's what I said in the beginning.
I gotta go for real this time, bro. I'm at work.
All right.
I apologize.
No problem.
I followed you, and I hope I can build with you another time, because I know you got a lot of wisdom and there's a lot of things I can learn from you.
I appreciate you, man. Look forward to it.
Bro.
Yeah, I know. He's at work, so that's why y'all's hearing that background noise. But yeah, we have in order to truly understand how things are, you have to look beyond just what we've been taught in school and what you just hear that sounds good to your ears. We have every culture has a great history. Every culture has a terrible history. Every culture has been conquered. Every culture has done some conquering. A lot of history has been lost. But the more and more we dig, the more and more we find out about more of the world history. I have some people waiting patiently over here on TikTok. I don't know, to see if they're still there. Nope, he's gone. Yeah, for those who are new to the channel, I only take one person at a time. When you get too many people on here, they yelling and screaming and arguing and people talking over each other all the time, and no. That's a no. All right. And It always interests me how people talk about the matriarchy as if that was as if it ever existed as a whole. It didn't, as far as we know. It has existed in spots, but not as a whole. Very few times in the 12,000 years of history that we are truly more accountable to, you have moments where there was a queen. But I'm really curious the way he got this idea of a democracy. That was African democracy that was going on. Kingships, chieftainships were the primary forms of government all over the world for the majority of world history. And, when I did read Shake Out the Job back in, that would have been more than 30 years ago, a little more than 30 years ago. To me, I read and I saw, okay, I liked it. It sounded very pro-Black, pro-African, pro-Pan-African. But I also saw it was biased. It's also a bias work, as most authors are. Most authors are biased. So we don't have this. It'd have been great if there was this beautiful time where everybody was being fair to men and fair to women. But in our 12,000 years of history, we do not see where women were treated equally on a whole by any nation. No. It was a man's world. It was a man's world in most countries. And I would say, just like how Christianity, the more and more I studied it, I found a lot of it disheartening. Even when I studied different African histories, because there's no such thing as studying African history. There's too many fucking countries, too many tribes to say that, for African history. You pick and choose what main nations or tribes that you're going to focus on. And you could focus on 20 different tribes and still not know the whole of Africa. It's a huge fucking continent, right? A lot of different nations, a lot of different tribes. And all those different tribes and nations did things their way. And most of them had kings, so. And they had queens, but they were patriarchal, like a champ. I know I missed a lot of you guys' statements. Let me see if I can. Oh, nope, that's not the right button. Right, Michael. Every human on the earth has melanin. Everybody has melanin. The only people who don't have melanin, I think, are albinos, and that's it. Albinos are the only ones who don't have melanin. But that doesn't make them any less than anybody else. I probably should enforce time limits. You're right. Especially when I usually do when there's someone waiting. I didn't do it on that one. I should have. I should have. And yes, Jim, there are always two sides to every story. And most of the time we hear the side of the ones who won. It is only in the last 30 years that we're starting to get more of the side of the people who lost. But throughout the majority of our history, we only hear the victor side of the story and not the other side. And we just can't talk about this subject matter today. Y'all be pissing me off. I could watch somebody else live, had the same goddamn thing, and they will talk about it. People come on here and they want to talk about it. I saw something earlier. Sounded like some bullshit. Ethiopia is part of Israel. No, the fuck is not. Where would you get Ethiopia as part of Israel? Ethiopia has never been part of Israel. Ethiopia, for the most part, has always been its own country. Only for a short time frame did the Italians, mess them up. But it is not. It has not ever been part of Israel. if you don't speak Hebrew, you are not kosher. If you do not follow mitzvah, you were never from Israel. It's not that complicated. Yeah, I don't speak Hebrew. I never followed the mitzvah. I never was Israel, and I never will be. Why would I ever want to be an Israelite? One of the worst groups of one of the worst histories and superiority mind-throwing people in the world. It's interesting comment. So what do you use as proof of anything that was documented in ancient times? We could say the same thing about most ancient documentation. Did any of it really happen? So documentation alone is not sufficient evidence to prove anything. Just because somebody writes something down doesn't mean that that's what actually happened. Generally, what we need would be other levels of archaeology. The pottery at the time, the coins, like when we talk about people like Alexander and his conquest of, his conquest of the Middle East and all the way to India and Egypt and that sort of thing. Well, what we can see is that there were coins minted during the time frame of Alexander. That the biographies about Alexander are quoted by later biographies, and they say where they got it from. We can see the building construction of Greek influence throughout the Mediterranean where Alexander conquested. We can see the kingships, for instance, the Ptolemy dynasty. We know that the Ptolemy dynasty existed. We have coins, potteries, documents, buildings, all those things that say that, yes, at some point the Greeks conquered Egypt. We know that they conquered Egypt. We know that they set themselves up as kings. We know that his general Ptolemy set up his own dynasty after Alexander died. So those things, all those things combined proves and will prove a narrative concerning it. Now, does it prove that Alexander was born from his mother had sex with a god? No, it doesn't prove any of that bullshit. But whether or not he existed, whether or not he conquested the lands that he claimed to have conquested, we have enough evidence to demonstrate that. Uncle Deconstruction. Really? That's what we doing. That's what we doing. Do you believe white Europeans and brown Arabs weaponized religion against black people? At a certain time frame, yes. The trans-Sahara slave trade was a weaponization of Islam towards the people of the Sahara and the first beginnings of sub-Sahara. The Europeans weaponized it in the 1400s against their colonization of African nations, beginning with the Portuguese in 1844. Was it we are specifically just want to weaponize this against black people? No. The leadership of the Arab nations and the leadership of the European nations also weaponized the religion against their own people as well. It's just that when they needed more slave labor, unlike the Romans, who they didn't enslave anybody, they targeted this group because it was easier to conquest them and enslave them than it was to enslave their own people. And especially once you become a Christian or a Muslim, it tells you that enslaving another Christian or enslaving another Muslim is not something you should do, and you should actually have them as an indentured servant, provide a way for them to be able to get out of their slavery in Islam. But because it says that foreign nations, Leviticus 25 says that of the foreigners you may make into permanent property slaves, then the Africans were seen as foreigners. When they came to the Americas, they tried the same bullshit. So it's not so much as weaponized against a particular people because they are that people, but it's just the opportunity. But like I said, they weaponize it against their own people as well. And there are some interpretations, but then once things go through peer review, there is most of it is not an interpretation. You can't interpret whether or not a building was constructed with Greek influence or if the coinage is of Greek coinage. There's no interpretation on those things. It's just is. Interpretation falls down. That's more in the God shit. You get interpretations. And then, like I said, peer review. Shit, what is his name? I can't think of his name. Zachariah Sitchin. Zachariah Sitchin's first interpretation of the Sumerian tablets, after extensive peer review and more knowledge is utilized, we find that some of the things that Zachariah Sitchin said was just wrong. His interpretation was wrong because peer review demonstrated, and the fact that we gain more knowledge about something. You have to realize that we've gained more historical knowledge and archaeological knowledge in the last 50 years, just 50 years, than we have throughout any other time frame in history, or put all the history together. We've learned more in the last 50 years than any other time frame, than all the other anthropological history put together. You know, them motherfuckers thought that dragons was flying around and doing shit, or that there were giants on the planet because they found dinosaur bones. You find a big ass femur and you say, "Oh, that's a human bone. That's a femur. It was giants walking around." And people found this shit all over the world. And so all over the world, you got stories about giants. But archaeologically, we've started to realize that no, them are big ass animals. And there are no giants. Giants never existed. So all them like stories in the Bible talking about giants ain't never existed. 3-cube law won't allow for giant humans to actually exist. It's an impossibility. I think the tallest human can only be about 8-9 feet, somewhere in that 8-9 feet region. No. And even right now, we're discovering that like we all grew up with Jurassic Park. Dinosaurs weren't these lizard-looking things. They most likely had feathers. They're more bird-centric than they are lizard-centric. So no, a lot of this stuff we're finding out more and more now than we ever have. But Jim, I need you to be more specific. How are we making definitive claims about incomplete and limited evidence? All we have are assumptions when we go back far enough. It depends on what you're talking about. We definitively know that Noah's flood never happened. It's definitively known that Noah's flood never. It's definitively known that the Exodus never happened. It's definitively known that the world was not created 6,000 years ago. Like, that's not an assumption, right? That's a fact. Kevin said he thinks that dinosaurs are BS. If we didn't have full, complete skeletons, you might be able to hold on to that one. But since we do have full, complete skeletons, big ass animals existed. But that's why I don't do vague statements. I try not to do vague statements because you got to pinpoint things. You know, when like the gentleman that I was talking to, when the statements are vague, you know, he incorporated all of Africa in Egypt. No, you can't do that. We got to be specific. And when we talk about this Bible, you got to be specific. Like the Tower of Babel, we have found that during the Babylonian time frame, and gosh, I was researching, I can't find, it's not coming up in my head right now. I forgot which king it was, but there was an unfinished, I got something in mind. There was an unfinished ziggurat, and the dude struggled for 90 years to try to build this ziggurat. And a lot of people are thinking, a lot of scholars are thinking that this is where the biblical story of Babel comes from the 90 years during the Babylonian captivity that this ziggurat was unfinished. and that the story was created as a, I'm gonna talk shit about the Babylonians since they're in control of us kind of story. But we know that they did build ziggurats. But the Babel means gateway of the gods in cuneiform, in the Babylonian language. It has nothing to do with confusion of languages. Right? How can you say that about all of them? Because none of these, what proof, Jim, what proof do you have that any of these things actually happen? Where's the proof of any of them? The closest thing you might get is the possibility that Solomon's kingdom may have existed. David's kingdom is still kind of, you just got one inscription that talks about the house of David on the Tel Dan stele, that the house of David was utterly destroyed. But if the Tel Dan stele is correct, then the house of David was utterly destroyed. And if the house of David was utterly destroyed, then Solomon's kingdom could not have existed if the house of David was utterly destroyed. Now, that could have been a king being hyperbolic and, exaggerating. But it calls David's house a house of David. It doesn't say the kingdom of Israel, the kingdom of David, the kingdom of the Israelites, the house of David. That would be like saying what's a house? The house of the Melons have been utterly destroyed. No, even better. The house of the Carnegies have been utterly destroyed, because as of 1971, not one Carnegie was a millionaire, when Carnegie used to be the richest man in the world. But it wasn't until after 1971 that now there are two Carnegies that are millionaires, but the house of Carnegie is pretty much utterly destroyed. Right? So David could have just been a dude who was a chieftain or a warlord. That's all that is telling us. It's not telling us that this unified kingdom of Israel during the time frame of David, which would have only been plausible during the 900s and somewhere between 900s and 800s BCE, could not have been plausible earlier than that. Most likely mid to late 800s, in order for Hezekiah to be king during the time frame that in order for there to be the split of the northern Israelites and southern Judah, and for the Hezekiah to be king in the 700s. So you would have to put Solomon and David in the 800s BCE, but we have no evidence of Solomon or David. And we know historically that these motherfuckers who call themselves kings will make up a lineage in a heartbeat. I like this name. Dangerous Drug. Is it Dangerous Doug? Hello. Dangerous Doug. Dangerous. Did you hit it by accident, Dangerous? Dangerous. Dangerous Doug. Dangerous Doug going once. Dangerous Doug going twice. Dangerous Doug going 3 times. Okay. Yeah, so as I was saying, we know these people will make up lineages to give them authority over people in a heartbeat. So I don't really look at those and say, oh yeah, just because the Bible say that Hezekiah and them or whoever came from this person or this kingdom existed, nah, there's no evidence they existed. Muntu. How do I say that? The Muntu?
Yeah, Muntu. Hang on, let me background.
You're kind of echoey.
Right, I had to stop the regular feed from coming in so that I could speak to you on StreamYard without the feedback,
Right.
You understanding me? I know I've got a funny accent.
Nah, you're all right.
And if you remember, I've been here before a few times in the early stages. Trifold, you called me Trifold.
Oh, Trifold. Okay.
Yeah.
Change your name.
Well, first of all, let me say thanks a lot for letting me up, for having me. I was kind of in the bushes just listening, you know what I mean? Because I'm kind of multitasking right now, but it's always interesting to listen to you. Now, with that being said, let me address some of the what you've got on the screen, the thumbnail. Did the Torah
Okay.
actually happen? Creation, Adam and Eve, Noah's flood, and so on. I just want to begin with one point concerning Noah's flood, at least. I can probably speak to this
Okay.
more efficiently than I could speak to many of the other topics. But I do believe we have recorded evidence of a worldwide cataclysmic situation has been recorded in chronological history that happened in 2239 and is well equated with Noah's flood. Let me just read the caption from this particular manuscript. Here it goes, quote, of the four catastrophic destructions called floods in recorded human history, by far the most popularly known all over the world is the Great Flood of Noah, described in the book of Genesis. While there's a large body of theories who like to claim that the Great Deluge was just after the last ice age, there's nothing in the historical record to support this. Instead, the monuments, traditions, ancient texts, and chronology aligns perfectly with widely accepted scientific, multidisciplinary conclusions of a worldwide catastrophe in 2239 BCE. So, with that
And where
being
was
said, I
where's
invite
that
you
from?
to dissect that as you like.
Where's that from?
Uh,
What article is that from?
that is, this is from a body of work that's known as archaics theory, which is it sounds mystical, but it's really a large body of chronological data, calendric systems, and so on, which we use the calendric systems to put the chronology in order. Cross-referencing,
Okay, wait. You said archaic mysteries.
multicultural
Hold on, man.
records.
You said archaic mysteries?
No, not Archaic Mysteries. It's called archaics.com, really. Where this guy is he's a chronologist, but it's not the only work that I've followed, but he is presenting some very compelling arguments to corroborate a lot of what we call mystical stuff or mythology. Does have a lot of compelling evidence to prove chronological history or chronological dating.
Well, what is he using? Because I mean, saying that multiple disciplines and whatnot doesn't really prove
No, well,
anything.
the excerpt that I read was a kind of a summation of the fact that there are actual records to show from multiple different points of view that there was a particular deluge or a catastrophic event in the form of a deluge, which can be ascribed to being Noah's flood, thus corroborating the biblical account.
No, it's not corroborating just because there are other flood stories out there.
Well, this is why I put it out to you, so you could dissect that as you like. It was just, my input for the show.
I mean, there are.
Let me mute it.
And it's weird. I just did a video on this yesterday. Like I literally just did a video about this yesterday. That there are literally hundreds of flood stories around the world. And the overwhelming majority of those flood stories are localized floods. Most of them dealing with river floods or lake floods. And the timing of these floods, they do not all corroborate the exact same time frame. You have floods that are happening before Noah's flood, floods that are happening after his flood with these stories. For instance, the Algonquin story is a story about a great serpent being pissed off, getting into a fight. Well, got into a fight with another deity, and then in response to the fight, he flooded the Great Lakes, which flooded the Algonquin people, and they ran up into the hills to escape this flood. That flood myth is way after the Noah's flood story. And it only flooded their region. It didn't flood the world. So that doesn't corroborate the Noah's flood story. Neither does the Aztecs flood story, the Mayans, the Egyptian flood stories are all about the Nile River flooding. So the Chinese flood stories are about the Yellow River flooding, and there's no boat involved. There's a rainbow involved, but there's no boat. And so just because other people have flood stories doesn't mean that the Noah's flood story is correct, and especially when you have civilizations that existed before the Israelite story with the Sumerians, Akkadians, Assyrians, and Babylonians all had flood stories that existed before the Noah's flood story. Those are more in line with the Noah's flood story and how things happen, but those stories are older than Noah's flood story. And they placed the flood thousands of years before Noah's flood.
Mm-hmm. Okay, granted. Well, for the most part, you have attacked the question in an amicable way, should I say it?
But let me also add this, something else that you said. We are finding more and more evidence of the Younger Dryas flood that happened somewhere between 12,000 and 9,000 BCE. When we are looking at what is it called? I forgot what underwater archaeology is called. But the more and more, maybe.
Let me just say this in between before you go too much further in this, because this excerpt that I read, I actually didn't continue because it involved the Younger Dryas narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I really didn't actually read the last sentence of this, which is to say, and I will read it now. Instead, the monument, traditions, ancient text, chronology aligns perfectly with widely accepted scientific multidisciplinary conclusions of a worldwide catastrophe in 2239 BC, period. If a massive flooding happened in the Younger Dryas period, it has nothing to do with the world's flood traditions and flood hero.
Why? Because this guy said so?
I purposely chose to leave that. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, so.
Well, let me say this to preface this entire body of work. Let me say that this work really deals with calendrics, as I spoke of before, and we know that the calendar has been changed multiple different times for many reasons that we don't even understand or we've not even been told. But the real reason for the changing of the calendar over millennia and so on is actually to hide something, which is something I don't want to go into on your channel.
I disagree with the calendar has been changed to hide something. Most of the time, calendars were changed because months were coming out of season, and most calendars were built so that the agrarian countries, which is most of the world, every April they know this is when to plant. Now, all of them didn't use the word April, but this time of the year we want to plant. This time of the year we want to harvest. This is when winter is supposed to start. So it's kind of like most calendars change because of almanac reasons. Some change because of astrological understandings, and the stars and the planets weren't in the right place.
Hang on, coach. You just used a different word. I said calendar. You said almanac. Come on, give us.
No, I'm talking about the same thing. The calendar.
I said calendar. You said almanac.
Okay, you're grasping for a straw here, because
this is a segue. Give us the trivia.
No,
of almanac between an almanac and a calendar.
almanacs and calendars were tied, tied to each other. Like the reason why for instance, Caesar's calendar, right? Julius Caesar didn't change the calendar because he was trying to hide something. He changed the calendar because the months weren't coming in the same season that they should come into. So he added 2 months so that the seasons and the months would match up to each other, which is connected to agrarian societies for planting and harvesting. So I'm not changing the narrative. It's they're connected to one another as to why. So you said the why was because they were trying to hide something. They're not trying to hide anything.
Well, let me say this. The why they were trying to hide something is because of the very same reasons that the months weren't coming the way they were supposed to. Because something happens periodically, something cataclysmic happens periodically that discombobulates everything.
It doesn't have anything with cataclysmic events. It has something more to do with being able to run a nation and to be able to have that nation planting and harvesting at the same time annually. And so that society runs more smoothly. And as far as cataclysmic events, most of these people only knew of a few cataclysmic events that ever happened, one being the Ice Age, and two, the Younger Dryas flood. The Younger Dryas is not just a flood. The Younger Dryas is as the world was coming out of an ice age, all of a sudden a deep ice age happened that lasted for about 3,000 years. And then for some unknown reason to which we still don't know, the water melted really quickly and 400 feet of sea level regained 400 feet of sea level regained its previous ice age levels. And so flood stories came out because of that, but flood stories also came because of annual floods or a heavier flood. So like Katrina that happened in the Gulf Coast would have been considered a cataclysmic event to the people living in that area if we were still in a state where communication wasn't as widely known as it is today.
Well, I can understand you saying that, Coach. But when we've got events that are recorded or noticed, observed from different continents, I should say, then we should consider it a worldwide event.
Well, it depends. That's relative. Like I said earlier, most of the floods are lake and river floods. Like the Peruvian flood is a lake flood. It's not a river flood. It's not a worldwide flood. It's not a rain falling down flood. It did have rain, sorry, but it's not a worldwide flood. It is only the lake that what we call that rose up to the level of Lake Titicaca and all this other kind of stuff. So it was just a lake flood. They never thought it was a big old flood. The Indian flood with Manu was a cosmic flood. They believe that the world revitalizes itself cyclically every like 15,000 years or something like that.
Yeah, but so this is the entire reason that the Maya had a calendar which was cyclical, counting the yugas and so on. You know that very well, Coach. Come on.
And they did, but that does not prove a worldwide flood. And then your guy who writes this page, archaics.com, Jason Bashir.
Yeah.
I mean, he claims to be a researcher and he's written a bunch of books that are on Amazon.
He is.
But he does not, but I don't see where he is validated in any form of fashion. I mean, he's a guy who's selling books.
No, he's been published way before he was on Amazon. He's been published before 2012. He was actually published disputing the fact that 2012 was a reset count.
I mean,
even before.
I mean, he's published by Booktree out of San Diego.
Yeah, yes.
There are literally thousands of publishing companies around the world. And yes, he was publishing before 2012. But hell, if you go back
Yeah,
enough time, if you go
we're
back
not,
to, hold
we're
on,
not here.
if
I'm
you
not
go
here
back to,
disputing the.
let me finish.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
If you were to go back to my videos prior to 2012 and definitely in the leading up to 2012, I was telling people that this is not the end of the world. This is just a reset of the Mayan calendar that just restarts at the first Bantum, and it's just the coming of a new age. And that type of mentality is widely thought of by multiple cultures around the world. The Egyptians had it, had a similar system. The Indians, the people in India had a similar system. Different other Native American cultures had a similar system.
Well, to be honest, this is not what his angle is. His angle is completely different. His angle is that the Mayan count was wrong. 2012 was not the deadline, and it is at a future date.
Well, he's wrong about that one because the Mayan.
He's also disputed.
So every time I talk, you gonna interrupt me?
Sorry, go ahead.
But the Mayan calendar, I don't dispute that the Mayan calendar wasn't the end of the world. It was just a reset of the next Bantum. So the first Bantum started over again, which is a different age. And that's all it was. And that's all it, and most agree with that. And there were a lot of people agreeing with that at that time frame, that it wasn't the end of the world.
I can agree with that. The problem is that the Bactune count and the Ner count are wrong. This is the entire crux of his entire work. The Ner counts from Egypt and Sumeria are wrong, and the Bactunes reconciliations are wrong.
Okay, so the Bantuns and all those things, I wouldn't say they were wrong. They were just what those people thought.
No, the reasoning for them being wrong is that they were dated on a 360-day year, a 360-day year count, as opposed to the 365 and a quarter days year count that we have now. So you have to factor in the difference to arrive at.
Okay, so what's the point?
Authentic date.
So what's the authentic date of the end of the last Bantum of the Mayan calendar?
I really don't want to say, because this is not his channel and I don't promote. We are in that circle. We don't promote this outwards out of it because there's a lot for people to take in. So I really don't promote it. I mean, if you press me, I will tell you the date.
What's the date? What's the date?
May 2040.
May 2040. So that's supposed to be the end of the Mayan Bantum the Mayan calendar. The end of that, of the, what is the 12th or 13th Bantum? That's supposed to be the end of that Bantum. All right. I guarantee in 2040 ain't shit gonna happen.
You can't guarantee that.
I can guarantee it, because not one doomsday prediction from any culture has ever happened.
Well, it depends on what you describe as doomsday prediction. What's your
Mayan calendar ending is a doomsday prediction?
It's not a doomsday prediction. It's a reset.
It's just a reset.
Of the yugas.
And
remember, when we're speaking of resets and the yugas and so on, remember, an age takes 26,500 years. So if you could reconcile this with a clock.
That's not the end of an age. That's the end of the what is it called? When a wobble of the earth. That's the end of
a precessional age.
No, the precessional ages are every like 2100 and some odd years. Is that you go through the end of an age when the sun begins to enter into a new zodiac and leaves the old.
I stand to be corrected on.
Yeah, that's the end of an age. The great year. Thank you.
What I'm saying is that
the great year. The great year is the 26,000 year wobble of the earth, which, in all honesty, all that astro theology don't mean a damn thing. It's just what people created to try to understand the movement of the stars and the planets. if they understood that the earth was on an axis and that it does this wobble, and that's just a natural thing that just happens, then all this mysticism around it would not have been created.
Well, the thing is, I can understand that dynamic. I can understand that particular model. I do. And I can show you calculations and everything for it. But I also subscribe to flat plane. I don't say flat earth because
The earth is not a flat plane.
Pardon?
I'm not even gonna get into the whole flat earth thing because
Exactly. So let's not go there. Let's not go there. Let's just adjust your
the exactly is that it's a ridiculous argument. That's why I don't get involved in it. I don't get involved in it because it's any validity towards it. It's just a ridiculous argument. You know.
Well, see, you're going there. I'm not willing to defend this right now. I got my style, you got your style, but we could both meet on common ground with academics, can't we?
It depends on who these academics are coming from. But this Jason Basir dude, I'm not supporting his academics based on what you've told me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know the guy. I've never heard of this guy. I don't know the guy, so I can't state a lot about
exactly,
it.
Which is why I don't want to go too deep with him, because if you're quite welcome to look him up on your own, delve into his stuff, give it a scrutinizing eye. That's all well and fine. You know what I mean? But I'm not here to do that.
I mean, from what I can just see of him right off the bat, he's just a guy trying to sell some books. And this is a great topic to sell books on. Now, for his book selling, I give him all the credit in the world. It's a great way to sell books.
Really and truly, we could say that about a lot of other people, couldn't we?
Yeah. If I wrote a book about giants, it would probably be a good seller. Because people are interested.
If you present compelling information, yes, but if you present garbage, it won't be a good seller.
But see, now think about what you just said. Compelling information. For me, compelling information is supported by scientific facts that we can measure, observe, and repeat. But what most people want for compelling information is just something that already fits the narrative that they already believe. So if people believe that there were giants, they don't want to hear about ancient man just finding dinosaur bones and thinking that those are giant people. They don't want to hear that. They want to hear that there were giants and that they built Easter Island and they built the pyramids and all these other megalithic structures. If you can create evidence for that based on stories, but not based on scientific facts.
I can agree with you, Coach, but I think throughout all your endeavors and searches, you're on the path just like me. I think you're being a bit too practical, Coach, too square. The exception to the rule proves the rule. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah. And and if there is a strong enough exception to the rule, then that would be fine. And there is evidence, and there is an exception to the rule that I accept. I accept the exception to the rule that life on Earth happened and that the overwhelming majority of the universe does not have life in it. And so we are the exception to the rule of universal life, as we know what life is. So but we can observe that exception. We can see it. We can measure it. We know that life exists on this planet. So then it is the exception to the rule. But there is nothing that we can observe, measure, and repeat that demonstrates the exception to the rule of giants.
Okay, fine. Granted, I understand your argument. However, let me say this. You accept that life on Earth happened, and I accept that as well. However, let me go further and say that I believe is by intelligent design, which brings another realm into consciousness.
Yeah, I don't accept intelligent design because when I look at the universe, I don't see intelligent design. I see cause and effect out of a bunch of what we would call chaos, because the universe is completely chaotic.
To be honest, I don't see it. I actually see the universe as quite uniform. I see all the patterns that around me. I actually think it's quite straightforward. To be honest, I don't know if I'm like Neo and I'm seeing through the matrix, but I think I kind of recognize the world in patterns. I can be honest with you. Just listen to this story for 2 minutes.
All right.
A while ago, of years ago, I really wanted to understand life. I mean, completely differently from the entirety of society, from the sheeple, if you would say.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to stop watching television, listening to the radio, all that completely. I mean, I didn't even read books for about a year or two. And I just observed people for myself and their patterns, observed the natural world for myself. And somehow intrinsically, a pattern formed to me, began to understand people, natural phenomena, and so on. And I really don't know how to explain it, but I think it brought me to a higher level of comprehension than I had before reading books and so on. I've actually come to this stage
Give us
now
an
where,
example. Give us an example of this natural pattern of the human behavior.
okay, let's say this. If I could borrow from the zodiac just for a moment, not as
From the
a
what?
tell-all or so, but just borrow from the zodiac.
Okay.
And I'm a Rasta man. I don't really use the zodiac. I transfer the zodiac into the 12 tribes of Israel, as in each month is a tribe depending on when the moon rises and sets. So
Mm-hmm.
each month is a tribe, and they've all got attributes just the same as the signs in the horoscope has got attributes. And these things I had studied before, but then again began to observe people. April is Reuben. Reuben is the firstborn of the tribe of Israel, which means he's the first and the leader. Reuben's attributes are, well, first his body part is the eyes, which means he sees everything. If you know anybody in April, they always know everything. They got gossip, they know shit on people, that kind of way. And I actually I was watching people in real life, and they actually adhered to all of the attributes of the tribes. For the most part, I should say like 90 to 95%. So I began to recognize those patterns. In this time now, it's quite possible that I could observe you without even interacting with you and figure out what month you were born in, what kind of energies you move in with, you carry in. I mean,
Okay.
it was kind of transcendent, to be honest.
So what month was I born in? I don't know. You've been watching me for a while. You may already know.
I might have known before, but at this point, I really can't pull it out of the field to bring it to my mind. But we've got, I would say, even observing you, you've got a toroidal energy somewhere between Simeon and Judah. Simeon is May, Levi is June, August Issachar, September Zebulun. Some energy somewhere between there. You know what I mean? But it's all subjective.
That's a whole lot of time.
Yeah, but I could probably narrow it down with a more closer observation. What I'm saying, back to the point though, is that
Wait, hold on. Now let's talk about this zodiac thing. So the first thing is that I was born in October.
Dan, serpent. Oh,
I
that's
was born in
why.
October. Now you can't try to say that explains anything now. You had your opportunity.
Not really in retrospect.
I mean, you
I
put me
might
on
look
back
back
in
and see
April,
some
May.
things. I might look back and see some things which do relate to Dan, to be honest. You got a slight flamboyance in your hat. Dan is kind of flamboyant.
My hat is not flamboyant.
in a very nondescript and minimalist way.
Come on, man. Look, the 12 zodiacs was non-existent until the Babylonian calendar was created.
Agreed.
There was nobody was looking at zodiacs as a 12 zodiac symbol before then. Now we are starting to see that that people did look at the stars, but the people in Göbekli Tepe, who are older than the Babylonians, they had zodiacs, and it's debatable whether they had 12 or 13 zodiacs at the time frame, because they weren't using a 360 day calendar. And so far from what we can tell, they weren't using that. But their zodiacs were completely different. They had a vulture zodiac. So people look up in the stars and they create their own shapes. They have their own pareidolia going on, and that's all the zodiac.
I feel rich, busy dog. Come on, man. I feel attacked.
No, don't be attacked. That's just pareidolia. And I used to be a zodiac kind of guy. I used to believe in that shit. I honestly did. I thought it had some bearing on my life and who I was and all these sorts of things. And then, I found myself acting out, performing what my zodiac said. And then I realized that was just another level of indoctrination, is acting out your zodiac. Oh, I'm a Libra, so I got to be fair and balanced and all this other kind of bullshit. And then I realized, no, I don't. Either you present facts or you don't. Either
this is the difference between zodiac and 12 tribes, because 12 tribes says that you're a Dan, and Dan is judgment.
The 12 tribes ain't got nothing to do with me, because my ancestors had nothing to do with 12 tribes of Israel. They never came.
Dan is judgment represented by the serpent.
My ancestry never came from the Middle East. I have no Middle Eastern ancestry whatsoever.
Yeah, well, it doesn't describe the lineage or the locality. It describes the energies coming from the stars at the time that you were born.
Well, if that's the case, I can go with the Chinese zodiac, because the Chinese zodiac describes me the same way. I forgot what it was.
You born in the year of the serpent.
Hold on. I can't remember if I'm a dog or a monkey. Oh, my bad. I'm a pig. And here's the pig. Just on a basic one. The pig element is metal. The key trace is tolerant, calm, honest, and understanding.
Mm-hmm. Just like a judge.
All right.
I told you, judgment.
But tolerant, being a judge doesn't mean you're tolerant.
It does. You have to be balanced. No,
you don't. How is it balanced when a judge says that a girl should be killed on her wedding day if she's found not to be a virgin? That's not good judgment.
Well, this is obviously not a judge in the true sense of the word, is it? It's a balanced and just judge. We could have a biased judge.
Yeah, you got plenty of biased judges. Got plenty of them.
All right, Coach, let's not stick it.
I don't think any of that stuff has to do with anything. It's just stuff that man created.
It's quite possible, but for me, it works. It resonates with me. So what works for me works for me.
And I let people have whatever works for them. But it obviously doesn't work for me. And like for me,
because you're so practical and pedantic.
No, it's just that I need some facts to back up whatever I'm going to follow. If it doesn't work, like I believe in what's called the trivium, right? I don't believe in it. I follow the trivium. The trivium is basically critically thinking based on the Roman philosophy, Roman Greek philosophy. And it goes back to Egypt philosophy, and I don't know how far back it goes beyond them. But it is basically gathering the facts, having an understanding of those facts, and then putting that understanding into practice to see what your results are. And from those results, you gain wisdom. The wisdom is either go back and maybe you need some more facts, maybe you misunderstood if you don't get the desired result. But that's how I process information. So like when I look at all this biblical stuff, I process information through that same mechanism. What are the facts? And the facts show that Noah's flood never happened. So then my understanding is that it never happened.
Please, let's not equate facts and information with wisdom, shall we?
You know, wisdom is after you put it into practice and you see what the results are. And then you gain knowledge based on those results. That's wisdom. Like nobody's born with wisdom. Wisdom is just the practical application of employing facts based on your understanding. And then learning from it, whether you need to change it or maintain it. That's all wisdom is.
You know, that's why you just kind of condensed what I thought. I always say, no matter how much wisdom and knowledge you gain, it's really of no use unless you could use it to improve your life. You know what I mean? Make your conditions more comfortable. I've actually weeded out a lot of wisdom that I thought was wisdom that was quite impractical.
I mean, that could be, but then oftentimes that what's called wisdom is put into practice that injures other people. For instance, the teaching that Black people can endure more pain, that they don't have the same sensitivities, that wisdom, that eugenics that was taught, they thought they were wise in that. And yeah, they found out a lot of things about the human anatomy in doing so, but they hurt a lot of people.
Wisdom.
Well, to them, it was wisdom because they learned, and based on your definition, they learned how to make life better. They learned how to make life better in general. There's a lot of medical science, medical wisdom comes from fucking over people.
Agreed.
And we benefit from it today.
It's really the only way that the medical profession was able to glean the information that they have gleaned over the years through lots of experiments, quote unquote experiments, which were very traumatic to patients, very victimizing. Oh man.
And we still are. The Tuskegee experiment is not too long ago.
I really did not want to bring that up.
But admittedly, even though it was a horrific thing to do to people, to those Black people, we did eventually learn a lot about, what was it, syphilis?
Yeah, syphilis and all the different stages that it would go through before it made its complete journey. I mean, yes, that's good information to know, but at what cost?
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes wisdom is not something that makes your life or people's life better. Wisdom can be used in the wrong way. You know, in general, what our general thought process of right and wrongs are. And of course, that's subjective as hell. But I do my best to utilize the information that I gain to help people out. That's why I don't know if you was on here earlier, but there's a guy in the comments. Jesus helped him to stop doing drugs. Stay with Jesus, man. If that keeps you from doing drugs and harming your body, harming your life, harming the people around you, stay with Jesus.
Oh, for real? Was it Black Jesus or Jeebus?
I don't know. I didn't get that.
He didn't differentiate. Listen, once I met Korean Jesus, he was demure as hell, man. But he knew everybody's business.
Yeah,
Korean Jesus.
So for me, like the people on here, if this doesn't better your life, then don't be on here. If it's up to you.
No, don't say that. We've got to see what the content is first, then analyze it, filter it and so on.
Now, there are some people who come on here,
We
and I
spit the
think
bones out. We eat the fish and spit the bones out, don't we?
now I think one of the reasons why I don't have as many confrontational discussions is because, one, I'm not seeking confrontational discussions all the time. The other part, I know it makes for a good show, so I do look for it just for that purpose alone. But for some people, this is an irritation to them. This is an aggravate. This disturbs their mental spirit and physical spirit. I don't want them on the show. I don't want them on here, because if you can't have a general debate without feeling all disruptive inside your body and your mind, you shouldn't listen.
But coach, you've got your channel called Deconstructing Christianity. That is a trigger. Come on.
Yeah,
dude.
and if you're triggered, if I see something online that triggers me, I don't watch it. Like, for instance, I deal with military PTSD, right?
Uh-huh.
So you know what I don't watch? Realistic military movies. Now, if it's some fantasy bullshit like, I don't know, like a fantasy movie, some space movie bullshit, I watch that. That doesn't bother me at all. But do you remember the movie Hotel Rwanda?
Yeah.
Well, see, I saw the aftermath in refugee camps of Hotel Rwanda.
No.
Right? And we had an incident in one of the refugee camps where people came in there shooting people. I never watched that movie. I cannot watch that movie because some of the things that that movie I saw. So no, it's not something that I'm going to watch and be a part of. So it would trigger me. So I don't watch it. So if something that I'm saying triggers someone, they probably shouldn't follow this page or watch none of the shit that I talk about.
Especially if it's the headline.
Right. So, some of these people get on here and they're all up in arms, and I'm like, why are you here? If you can't have an adult conversation about and still walk away from it thinking that, oh, that was just a good conversation, or I learned something, or I proved something.
Yeah, but you do go for the jugular, coach. Come on, man.
No, I go for misinformation and dogma. If all, like, your guy that you propped it up, that's just dogma. And he tries to. Oh, I've been looking him up. I've been looking him up as we've been talking. He's just a dogmatic guy who knows how to utilize that dogmatic information to sell books, and that's it. And he makes statements and claims that he does not scientifically back up.
But he does actually. All his writings, his claim is really that the research he's done is not completely his, but he's got a fantastic bibliography.
He researched
sources that he's cited and so on. And
his research is based on apologetic research, which apologetic research is already biased from its beginning because they already determine what the answer is going to be.
We call it alternative research.
No, apologetic research. When you've already decided what the answer is, if you already decide what the answer is, then you're not doing true research. Like when I went to Israel, right? I wanted to know. When I went to Israel, I wanted to know what the information really was. I did have somewhat of a bias. Excuse the noise right now, it'll be short. I did automatically go there with a bias because I wanted to prove Christianity and I wanted Christianity, but I wanted the right Christianity. So when I was in Israel, I was looking for information to support what I already believed. The only problem was damn near everything I found did not support what I believed. And that was a very trying time for me because I wanted that information to fit. I wanted the Jordan River to fit. I wanted the Bethlehem story to fit. I wanted all that shit. When I was in Jerusalem, I wanted it to fit. There are some historical things that did fit, but all the mystical shit, none of that fit. And then when I was there, I started learning not the Americanized, Romanized versions of these stories that have been told throughout history and time. I start seeing it from the people who lived in that day, what they would have thought, what they would have been, what. So understanding their thought process helped me to see really how much fluff it really was.
Nice. You know, that's so interesting that you just say that. I like that anecdote because I could actually see with that in 2023. I went on a Mediterranean cruise, right? And it was Christian based. It was a cruise which would have been retracing the steps of Paul the Ephesian from, his Genesis in Turkey right up to his culmination in Rome, where he
Yep.
went to the Vatican. So I basically went to all the spots that he would have stopped and spoke and so on.
Yep.
But it was quite interesting because the guides who were giving us tours and so on, speaking on this issue, really actually brought to light a lot of information that I would have never ever known unless I had been in that locale. I mean, I
Yep.
went to the Isle of Patmos. I've been in the cave where Paul had his vision and so on. There's a painting on. They don't allow you to take photos and so on. But I've been there up through the islands, all the way up to the Vatican in Rome.
Yeah.
And it's so very interesting to see it, as you've said, from the locals' point of view. I did not know that the real underlying reason that Rome's entire religious structure and so on was formed into Christianity is because of this particular character called the unknown God, which ruled all the other gods of Greece.
Wait, because of what particular character named who?
The unknown God.
Oh, Sol Invictus. You talking about Sol Invictus?
I cannot say yeah or nay, but from the locals, that is what they told me that.
Most likely you're talking about Sol Invictus, who was he was considered the unconquerable God, the unconquerable sun. And but like you, I went to many of those places. I didn't do a Mediterranean cruise because I was against cruises at that time frame in my life. But I did go to a lot of those places, like Ephesus and all these places. And you see an inscription and it's like, oh, this proves that the story is real. No, this proves that there were people who believed in Jesus. That's it. That's all it proves. And then, like in Israel.
Oh, sorry for cutting you. Just let me make this one asterisk. I'm sorry. But on that tour, it wasn't, people weren't actually venerating Jesus. They were venerating Paul.
True. But they utilize that as proof of Jesus. Just like when you go to Jerusalem, you'll see all the Christian people making a pilgrimage and they having all their emotional experiences. And I had some emotional experiences myself. I ain't gonna sit up here and say I didn't, because at the time I was a Christian. But then it disturbed me when we went to Calvary and there's the spot. They said, oh, this is the spot where Jesus was crucified. And then you walk like 30 feet over. This is the tomb. And I was like, well, damn, that's kind of close. But then the next day I go on a different tour and they take me out to this damn garden tomb. And they said, no, this is the tomb of Jesus. And
that's the real sepulcher?
I'm like, huh?
Is that the real sepulcher they took you to?
Is a real
sepulcher.
Oh, sepulcher? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both real sepulchers, but then so I'm looking, I'm saying, wait a minute, there are two tombs. So which tomb is the right tomb, or did somebody just make this shit up? And then you go to the museums, you talk to some of the archaeologists, and you find out that the Protestant tomb could not have been the tomb of Jesus because that was an Iron Age tomb, and so the time frame was wrong. So that one's wrong. Then you also find out that there were no tombs around Mount Calvary that close to it. So you find out that shit is wrong too, and you realize that it's all just a damn tourist trap. And then you start.
Yeah, I understand it's really commercialized, but if you speak to some of the more in-depth people, because I actually was privileged to have a university professor who was my guide on the tour. Anyhow,
But see,
I
that depends.
wanted
That depends on who the university professor is and where they're coming from. If they're coming from a seminary, they've already decided that this information is true. So it depends on where they come from. And then when it comes, hold on. When it comes to those places, it depends on who created the spot, whether the Catholic Church, whether the Protestant Church, or what church was, because there was a run on we got to find us a spot and claim that it has some significance because you research Helena, who was Constantine's mother. She was going down into Israel, and the local people said, "Oh yeah, 300 years ago, this is where this happened." And she was like, "Yeah, that's it. And I'm gonna build a damn temple over it." She didn't know. She supposedly found the true cross, but as they say, there are enough pieces of the true cross to build a forest. So nobody has a true cross and all this kind of bullshit, and you go to Rome and they're like, oh yeah, this is the three wise men and this is Peter's tomb and all this kind of stuff. Man, y'all just picked the damn tomb and said that it was Peter. And you placed it in what used to be a temple to worship Apollo. It's like, come on, man. It's like people just made claims back in those days, and because we didn't have the level of scrutiny that we have today, you had to accept the authority of the king, or the king would kill you. So yeah, all that stuff, it was very emotional. I have a picture. I ought to dig it out. I think it's in that box right over there. But I have a picture of me praying at the manger that they say was the manger. And I can tell you right now, I had an emotional, spiritual moment. And when but I realized later on it was just emotions. And when I was at what's that wall? The wall, the oldest, the still on the wall. Yeah, the Wailing Wall. Oh, I had a very emotional moment both times I was there, and I put my little prayer on a piece of paper and stuffed it in the wall, and neither one of them prayers come true. But
did you do the gestures? Did you do the gestures?
I did everything that them priests who were standing there told me to do. But I did find it kind of funny that the women have to go to one side and the men go to another side. I was like, that's stupid. Why are we separating sides? That don't make any sense. And then when those prayers didn't come true, I really had a problem with it, because if this is where Jesus and the angel Gabriel sat on this wall, there's supposed to be power in this wall. Ain't no damn power in this wall. Got baptized in the River Jordan. Ain't no damn power. You know what I'm saying?
Did you do the thrusting gestures as well?
I did everything, man.
The thrusting gestures.
I did everything. I did all the stuff.
That's copulation with a goddess, you know.
That's what?
Copulous with a goddess.
I don't know. I just did whatever the hell they told me to. And yes, Jim Cab, I did. I kissed the wall.
And none of your dreams came true. You didn't do the copulous correct for the goddess, man.
And put it like this. The first time I was in Jerusalem and I kissed the wall and put my little paper in there and all that kind of stuff and did my little prayer, it was a prayer. And on that piece of paper, I wrote about my marriage at the time frame. The one that I wind up 15 years later getting a divorce. So that damn prayer didn't come true. That's for sure. That prayer didn't happen. And I doubled down on that prayer, because the next year when I was there again, I did that prayer again. Now the third time I went there, I did a different prayer. So now, and even that prayer didn't come true, because I got 2 daughters and 1 son, not the 4 sons and 1 daughter. I wanted to
pray for something. You prayed for something specific.
Hell yeah, I pray for specific stuff.
Pray for the Lord don't work like that, dog.
That's bullshit. That's bullshit. Where if you ask for anything, I even did the thing where, so here's the thing. Each time I was there with another person, and me and that person agreed and prayed and meditated beforehand that we were going to be in agreement for each other's prayer. So each one of us knew what each other's prayer was going to be. So we went to the wall together in unity, because the Bible says that when 2 or 3 gather amongst me and are in agreement, I am with them, and whatever they ask for will come to be. So don't say God don't work that way, because that's what the Bible say. So the first time I went there with this guy named Tony, that's what we did. The second year, I was with Tony again, and we did it. The third year that I went there, I was with this guy named Kayetta, and we did the whole deal. And it was two of us in agreement. And guess what? Neither one of our shits ever come true. For them too, they shit didn't come true. So no. Tony was supposed to
then.
One of his prayers was to be able to do 27.
Is that where you lost faith, Coach?
Huh?
Is that where you lost faith?
Oh, hell no. I didn't lose faith till some years later. It was years later that I said, you know what, this is a bunch of bullshit. But like Tony's prayer, one of his prayers, the first time we went, that he does 27 years in the Marine Corps, gets his full retirement, gets his full VA, and that motherfucker got kicked out of the Marine Corps about 7 years later. So no, that shit don't happen. It's all a bunch of it's magic tricks, man. It's magic tricks and tourist traps. That's all it is. Magic tricks, tourist traps, based on certain historical things, but all the magic is just magic.
Mm-hmm. Well, I did want to address something you
oh, wait a minute. Before you go there, Jim said, did I do the thing in Mecca? Yeah. I cheated my way into Mecca. I sort of cheated. I kind of was studying Islam at the time that I went to Mecca. Yeah, I did the thing, walk around the rock 7 times, throwing rocks at the damn rock and get up there and do all the kissing and shit. Yeah, that shit didn't work either. That shit didn't work. But look here, man, I gotta go because my wife is here now. And
yeah, that's fine.
I love y'all, but I love her way more than I love y'all.
Thanks for having me. We had a good chat this evening. But you know what? We can continue this because we've only actually touched one topic, one point.
True. I should be back. I'm thinking about my schedule tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Tomorrow's Thursday. I think I missed an appointment, but I should be back tomorrow.
All right, then I will check you up. We could probably continue this.
All right. Appreciate you, man.
Good evening, good. Salute, guidance. You hear me?
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate you. I don't know what you just said. I think you said salute.
I said salute and guidance as well.
Oh, thank you. Have a good one, man. You're right, Jim. I'm going to enjoy my family. And Jim, I think you said something earlier that I just want to touch on before I get off here. And I think I sort of touched on it a little bit. I don't go to discredit the Bible with already the mentality of discrediting the Bible, discrediting it. Well, let me rephrase. I didn't come to the Bible to discredit it. Over the years, I've just found so many discrediting things that has become the focal point of this channel that is called Deconstructing Christianity. The hardest thing for people to understand who haven't been with me through this entire journey is that you don't know the history. You don't know how much I wanted this Bible to be true. And so all you see now is me showing how the Bible is untrue. Now, if you do listen, you'll hear me talk about, well, this part, Hezekiah probably most likely existed. Josiah most likely existed. Being in captivity by the Assyrians and then the Babylonians and then the other nations existed. These cities existed, fine. That don't make the Bible real. That don't mean that 80,000 troops, Assyrian troops, were killed by an angel, especially when Sennacherib said that he pulled those troops because Hezekiah paid him the bribe or the tribute, not the bribe, but the tribute. And so then he took those 180,000 troops and then further conquested down through the Levant into northern Egypt. So we have proof that the Assyrians conquered all the way down there. So which story is most likely? That Hezekiah lost those 180,000 troops to an angel, or that those 180,000 troops were reassigned and he conquested all the way down through northern Egypt? We got proof for one, no proof for another. If we had some mass graves outside of Jerusalem and they were Assyrian and they had like weapons and shield and body armor that was for that time frame of around 722 BCE, then hey man, I'll give a little bit more validity to that story. Still ain't going with the angel thing because we got to do some tests to see if they caught some kind of plague or something like that. But we have to get all the evidence. You see what I'm saying? But there's more proof that what Sennacherib said was true. Hezekiah admits that he paid the tribute, and then Sennacherib said that he brought those troops out and then went on conquering the rest of the way down. So that has more credence than some angel coming over and killing all the people. Because we don't see, you think Sennacherib would have wrote something about losing 180,000 troops. Even today, to lose that is a big ass deal. Even during the Civil War, they commemorate what is like 122,000 troops died or was injured or missing during Gettysburg. I mean, 180,000, that's not a small ass number. That's a huge number of people. So, but that's my approach. But as I said, my wife is here, so yeah, that ends today. And I hope I didn't miss that damn thing. If I did, I'm gonna be mad. But anyway, because what I'm trying to do is figure out what platform. This guy is showing me what platform, how I can use a different platform so that TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube can all be on one page, and it allows me to pop shit up on the screen a lot easier than StreamYard. So I got to get that appointment so I can make this podcast easier for me and better for y'all. But before I go, I want to thank everybody who supports the channel. I saw people doing memberships and gifts over on TikTok. I greatly appreciate those. I can't thank y'all for super chats or stars because ain't none of y'all gave us super chat or stars. And, you know, so, but for those who do have memberships and whatnot, thank you very much, because it does help to support the channel and allows me to do what I'm doing, you know. But if it doesn't grow, I'm gonna have to start another business. Because as my man said earlier, wisdom to make your life more comfortable. Yeah, I got to make more money. So yeah, there's some things I'm going to try on social media to see if that helps with the financial aspect of life. But I got a lot of earth to see. And yeah. And a lot of that earth will be to go to Israel and do videos based on being in those places, go to Machu Picchu, go to these places. That will be comforting to me to be able to go to those places and really show y'all these things and really get deep into them. So anyway, beyond that, thank you guys for y'all support. Appreciate it. Y'all have a great day. Always remember, you got to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey and good vibration. Oh, and last thing for my cigar smokers out there, I just finished smoking this cigar called Octane, and I have the Habano. There's a different one. There's the Maduro and there's the Habano. I had the Maduro put you on your ass. It's like smoking weed. But the Habano, still strong as hell, but it's not as strong. So y'all have a great day. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.